In my first confession, I spoke about my mother. In this confession, I want to talk about my brother. Both of them left deep scars on my life. The effects spread far beyond the moments themselves, reaching into many areas of who I became. There are so many emotions and memories attached to this story that I don't know if I can express them all, but I will try to be as honest and open as possible. I have two brothers. As a child, I was very attached to my eldest brother. Unfortunately, over time he became increasingly withdrawn and stopped talking to almost everyone in the house. One day, while we were playfully fighting, I jokingly said, "Don't talk to me." To my surprise, he took it literally. From that day onward, he stopped talking to me completely. That was the end of our relationship. Suddenly, I found myself emotionally alone. I never had much affection for my second brother. He often teased me about my looks and enjoyed making fun of me. But when I was around 12 years old, something changed. He began taking me to church with him. Since we studied in the same school and he was 6 years older than me, he naturally became my unofficial caretaker. He constantly sought my company. We would chat for hours. He asked for my opinions and involved me in his life. For the first time in a long while, I felt important to someone. My brother also suffered from a medical condition that caused seizures. The entire family worried about him. Despite visiting many doctors, there was never a clear diagnosis. Stress, examinations, arguments, or emotional disturbances could trigger an episode. Because of this, I became fiercely protective of him. As my family gradually fell apart, I felt increasingly responsible for his well-being. Eventually, it seemed as though I was the only person standing by his side. I convinced myself that it was my duty to take care of him. What I failed to realize was that I needed care too. I believed that caring for each other would be mutual. Instead, it slowly became one-sided. Over the years, I noticed changes in his character. He became skilled at manipulating people, creating sympathy in order to gain attention, favors, and support. His stories often became exaggerated. He would use people until he had received what he wanted, then move on without gratitude or loyalty. I watched him do this to others. What never crossed my mind was that one day he would do the same thing to me. Slowly, my role changed. I was no longer a brother. I became a nurse, a cook, a cleaner, a caretaker, a financial supporter, and eventually, an emotional punching bag. I would travel long distances to work, return home exhausted, and immediately begin cooking, cleaning, and taking care of household responsibilities. Meanwhile, he often remained at home throughout the day, waiting for me to handle everything once I returned. No matter how tired I was, my duties never ended. One particular incident changed the way I saw him forever. One night, I realized that his daily medication had run out and I had forgotten to buy it. By the time I finished cooking, it was nearly 11 p.m. I jumped on my bicycle and desperately searched for an open pharmacy. Every shop was closed. That night, I saw a side of him I had never seen before. He stayed awake and deliberately made my life miserable. More importantly, I became convinced that he was capable of inducing a seizure whenever it suited his purpose. For years, I had lived in fear, believing these episodes were entirely beyond his control. That night shattered my understanding. As the years passed, my youth slowly disappeared in service to someone else's life. I stopped paying attention to myself. I wore worn-out clothes, usually the ones my brother had discarded. Since he worked in the music industry and attended public events, he spent generously on his own appearance. Yet I wasn't even allowed to wear the clothes he no longer wanted. I still remember him saying, "If people see you wearing the same clothes I wear, there won't be any respect for me." So I wore the rejected pieces. His trousers were often too long for me. I would fold them, stitch them myself, and wear them to work. Looking back, I realize how invisible I had become. While other young men my age cared about their appearance, built friendships, and explored life, I looked like someone no one would notice. I neglected myself completely. I had reached a point where I possessed almost no sense of self-worth. Today, when I look back at that version of myself, I feel pity. Externally, he looked unattractive and unremarkable. Internally, he carried values such as trust, sincerity, faithfulness, generosity, sacrifice, and honesty. Yet those very qualities were repeatedly exploited, and still, he continued giving. The sacrifices did not end there. At work, I was offered a higher position that included accommodation. I turned it down because I believed my brother needed me. Later, I was offered another excellent opportunity in Goa. Again, I refused. I stayed behind for him. While I was giving up opportunities, my brother was building his own future. He found someone he wanted to marry and began making wedding arrangements. Even for his wedding, I had to borrow money. I cooked for his bride's family. I worked, served, sacrificed, and supported. When they finally married, I thought my responsibilities would lessen. I was wrong. Instead of gaining help, I gained more work. The newly married couple would spend their evenings out together and return home late at night. Meanwhile, I remained at home preparing meals for them. At that point, I began feeling trapped. My mind kept telling me that I was caught in an endless prison with no exit. Then came the night that changed everything. One evening, after they returned home, my brother said there was something important to discuss. He told me that his wife wanted to speak with me. Then he sat silently and allowed her to talk. She looked at me and said, "Why do you keep looking at me differently? I've noticed you staring at me in the kitchen." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I immediately understood the seriousness of the accusation. I asked her what exactly she meant. She simply repeated herself. "Yes, you are staring at me." What hurt even more was my brother's silence. After everything I had done for him, after all the years we had spent together, he sat there and said nothing. No defense, no objection, no support, nothing. That was the moment something inside me broke. I told them, "That's it. I can no longer stay in a house where such accusations are made against me." The very next day, I found a place to rent. The house wasn't even finished. There wasn't a proper door. But it didn't matter. A house without a door felt safer than a house where my character could be destroyed. For the first time in my life, I used my salary for myself. I paid the advance. I packed a small suitcase, and I walked away. That day changed everything. For the first time, I saw the world differently. For the first time, I began thinking about myself. For the first time, I spent my earnings on things I liked. For the first time, I bought clothes that fit me. For the first time, I started living my own life. Years later, I learned that my brother and his wife had separated. One day, through a mutual friend, I received a phone call. It was my former sister-in-law. She apologized. She admitted that the accusation had been false, but the reason shocked me even more than the accusation itself. She told me that my brother wanted me out of the house because my presence interfered with their privacy. He had asked her to find a way to send me away. Not knowing how else to do it, she invented the story. In that moment, everything became clear. I always knew my brother could use people. I had watched him do it countless times, but I never imagined he would do the same thing to me. I was his brother. I had sacrificed opportunities, money, comfort, youth, and years of my life for him. Yet in the end, I became just another person to be used and discarded. The day I left that house felt like a betrayal. Today, I see it differently. It was the day I finally met myself.